Okay, I'm going to dive back in this how to organize all this stuff about Camelot. 2 videos ago was creating Camelot in the compound. It was all about my efforts with the dogs. The video I shot 10 minutes ago was creating Camelot everywhere I go. When I had my big spiritual experience, June 26th of 19, turned my life over and just got happy. I, for a week or 2, agonized over what the hell just happened to me. Did I get enlightened? Because I've studied all kinds of Eastern spirituality. Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, which has been a really great influence on me because I feel untethered, cut loose. My friend Lee from my men's group said, try this one on, Unreasonable Happiness. And that really works for me. I dropped the whole craziness about enlightened, which is so egalitarian and so hierarchical. And in my year of roaming the high mountains of Appalachia, where I felt Native American presence so strongly in so many places, I adopted the Native American slogan of real human being. That's their highest compliment they can give a person, is they're a real human being, and that's the title on my card these days. But I felt like I had taken the Bodhisattva Pledge, that now that I'm so happy, I got to give back. And am I going to be a psychotherapist? That's hierarchical. And my whole way of doing psychotherapy was very peer-oriented always. I've been a corporate coach. I've been a mentor. I didn't like any of those. So what I latched onto was being with Majo, because after a whole life of being a human doing and not knowing how to be, Richard Alpert, Ram Dass' book, Be Here Now, had influenced me and my whole so many of people in my generation to move towards spirituality and meditation, but I didn't know how to be. I was doing. And I was in so much pain. I mean, until my early 40s, I didn't even know that I'd been sexually abused. And I was kind of a driven guy, over intense. Intense, definitely. But that when I first went to the mountains, March 28th of 2020, just 11 days or so after Asheville had shut down from the COVID, the power of nature took me. I got so even dramatically more happy and more grounded and more slowed down, and started to experience beingness, just being. I've been a smoker on and off my whole life, and when I would sit on my smoking rock out at my friend's place, I teased and said, I think the tobacco, the cigarette smoke, anesthetizes my brain so I can't think, because I can't form English words. Having been a writer, and my old girlfriend called me the word god. I was a word guy. I could not formulate English words. And I found that if I focused on that, I could extend it, and it could last a half an hour or an hour. And that's just gotten bigger over the last 3 years. So being, just being. So I came up with a product called Being with Majo, and Majo was my nickname in Asheville. I don't try to help, I don't try to do anything, I just be myself with you and encourage you to be yourself and remember who you really are, which is everything, infinite, one with God. And we see what happens. It's on a donation basis. After the dust has settled, you send me a tip by PayPal. So the first big venture into that, I do it everywhere I go, just when I encounter someone. What could I say to this person that could help them wake up, help them remember who they are? So I'd gone up to the mountains north of Asheville, and there's a wonderful mountain town, and my host, who I called Petula because she wanted privacy, she was a prominent social service person in that town, said, go to Marshall's, a wonderful little riverfront town. The fabulous French Broad River was really the grand father of the rivers in that part of the country. Marshall, awful lot of artists from Asheville moving out there because they can't afford studio space in burgeoning Asheville anymore. And I loved that town and kept going back there. And in a bar there, I met this guy who really impressed me, struck me as a really creative, interesting guy. And he lived at the end of a holler in Madison County. In Madison County, not Indiana, of Meryl Streep movie fame, was infamous for backwards. People considered it the most backwards county around there. And hollers, you could run back in these hollers and get so far away from everything. And partly because of those hollers, moonshine. And the moonshine trade was still alive and well. And people said the reason that several of those counties were still dry was because if they allowed legal alcohol, it would put the moonshiners out of business, and they had a lot of clout. So it turned out that this guy was college educated, had a fair amount of science, and he was the most highly regarded moonshiner in that area. And so I asked him, can I come visit you? And he said, sure. This was Friday night at this bar. Later on, he calls me and says, forget it, it's off. My girlfriend has, wife, I don't think they were married, but they have been together for several years, has moved out. She's left. She left a note. I am fucked up. Can't see anybody. And I said, you have to see somebody. This is when you need to not be alone. Let me come be with you. And he said I could. And the next morning, no, I guess that afternoon, Friday, I don't know, I'm a little confused about the timeline, but it was daylight, I think, when I ran back in that holler, and my 6,000-pound huge camper van, that holler just got narrower and narrower and bumpier, and it took a lot of screaming and swearing to get me to the end of the road, but I made it. And it was a beautiful home that her parents had built. Not fancy, but really nice, lovely home. And he was a mess. And I just was with him, and he said, we had gone on a cruise in the height of the COVID, when the COVID was just breaking out. I flew home, she stayed on the cruise and had an affair with some rich guy. And I've never been able to forgive her for it. And it's a shame that she left now, because I'm really at the point where I'm ready to forgive her for it. And I said, that's not enough. No, you've got to beg her forgiveness that you've been holding a grudge all these months. And I got him to the point where that made sense to him. That felt right to him. Well, she had forgotten some important things, and she drove 3 hours back and arrived the next morning. She had been heading for Portland, Oregon, to help with Black Lives Matter stuff out there, I think. I think that's why she was going. She shows up, and we spent 48 hours together, being together, which included moonshine. At one point I said, I'm a little anxious in the COVID about the three of us drinking off of this mason jar. He said, man, that stuff's 99 proof. It's going to kill anything. So we had an altered state going, and we had one big showdown where it was going to be his chance to beg for her forgiveness. And I had been a couples counselor, but I used skills I never dreamed of. And I basically beat him around the head and shoulders because he couldn't do it. When he'd try to forgive, he would come up with one more charge about why he had a right to be angry. And finally I said to her, you're right, leave him, go. Go, he's hopeless, he can't do it. And that cracked it, and he wept bitterly and begged for her forgiveness, and they fell in love again. And 3 days later headed for Portland together. So being with Majo, it includes all the skills, all the things I've learned, but it comes out of not trying to do anything, just being myself and feeling my compassion, and also my capacity to set limits and confront and call the bullshit, which has always been something that pops up in me, even though I was too nice a guy. My best friend Monty, his favorite memory of me was a party at my house out in the country. I hear one of our guests, a guy I didn't know, out in the kitchen say a racist joke and say, shit, now I gotta go deal with this. And I did, even though he's a big jock. Nobody talks racist in my house. So that's installment 2. Looks like we're on to 3. All right, bye.